Todd Nilson is a dynamic community strategist with over 25 years of leadership experience. He excels in building online communities and transforming digital workspaces. Todd has developed strategies for top brands like Activision, Facebook, and SAP, leveraging his skills in competitive intelligence, game thinking, and virtual collaboration. Todd holds 2 degrees and has pursued a PhD at the University of Kentucky. Based in Two Rivers, Wisconsin, Todd is a dedicated Rotarian living by the four-way test. An interesting twist, he's also a trained dancer in tap, jazz, modern, and ballet. Let's see what makes Todd so buzzworthy. Welcome to the show, Todd. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's great to be a guest. I appreciate the invite.
Oh, that's awesome. So, have you been on a lot of podcasts in the past?
I've been on a few. Yes.
Okay.
From time to time, people want to talk to me about entrepreneurship or whatever they have a particular bent or interest around customer success, online community building, all of the above.
I gotcha. Now, I did see a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons in your bio. So, you go to like the Comic Cons and stuff like that and speak about that kind of stuff yet?
I'm not really a Comic Con guy,
Okay.
although I enjoy it from afar. I have been to like the big Gen Con events in
Okay.
ages past. I am like an old school gamer since the 1980s,
Okay.
which
All right.
dates me a bit. But yeah, I up until this summer, I was running a game like every other week online, and
Wow.
yeah, I'm an old Dungeons and Dragons nerd. I love
Okay.
that stuff.
When I
Yeah.
was a kid, I grew up in the 80s, and I had a group of friends who were huge into the Dungeons and Dragons. And the Dungeons and Dragons side for me was like, oh, okay. But then they did this one, it was called Champions, as far as I remember.
I
And it
remember
was
Champions.
what?
Yeah.
Okay. It was Champions. Yeah. And it was like more
Superheroes.
superheroes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I can get into the superhero thing. So, so I played
Totally,
that for a
man.
minute.
Totally.
And then my last piece was like magic cards, the Magic the
Oh,
Gathering.
yeah. Yeah.
I know.
Keep it away, man. That stuff's addictive.
I'm telling you
Uh,
about it. I have
I
friends. I literally lost friends to Magic. Like that's all they wanted to do was play the damn card game. I'm like, no, I'm good. I got to go like get a life started. I
exactly.
was
Exactly.
like,
Yes.
and a handful of them are still, bussing tables and doing that stuff to this day. I'm like, okay, there you go. Anywho, you well read, well educated, run a consultancy business. Tell us a little bit about what you do and who you serve.
Yeah, thanks for that. My company is called Clock Tower Advisors. I started it up back in 2015, and before that, I had worked in agency and actually as a recruiter for many years before that.
Okay.
But my current business is to help organizations, mid-sized to large, B2B nonprofit organizations,
Hmm.
to plan, select software for, build, and run online community spaces, whether it's external for customers or internal as like digital workplaces for your
Mm.
employees. And for me, this is my life's work. I truly enjoy helping organizations come to grips with how they're going to help people connect
Mm.
in a technology mediated way and to make meaning and create and be joyful and do good things together.
So okay, now what? And this was obviously 2015. So this is not your first venture here. What were you doing before you started your company?
Yeah. So, like I said, I spent about 15 years in tech recruiting
Okay.
before I did that.
Hmm.
I love that space. I always said
Okay.
it was the best combination of being a bartender, bounty hunter, and psychoanalyst that's out there for anyone. I like matching people up with opportunities and getting them into the right companies so they were happy with their careers. That was great. But then I discovered the online world and online communities,
Mm.
social media platforms. I was an early proponent of a lot of these tools and platforms for their ability to bring people together across great geographical distances,
Gotcha.
people with common interests, and like that was gold for me. And so I found a way to pivot my career into this world
Mm.
of building those online community spaces. I started out with an agency doing that work, and then went independent, about 2015
Hmm.
with another firm that did that specifically, but then quickly diversified that out. So by 2017, I was hunting my own consulting gigs for everything.
Okay. Very, very cool. And so when for those who don't know about some of what you were saying, because it's a little bit of jargon in there, and so I want to make sure people understand
Of course.
exactly what you're building out here. Because like we have a virtual work. Let's start with the virtual work environment, I think is what it's called.
Digital workplace, virtual workspace. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. So
right.
what is that?
So think about your company's digital workspace. It used to be in times past, your organization would have maybe a company intranet where they just put all their stuff,
Mm,
your benefits information, documentation, official language, that the company uses. But those were very static spaces. And
mm,
so a digital workplace is a place where your teams and your members can come together and co-create value for the organization. There are probably different private groups for
mm,
different work groups within your company, within your departments. And the idea is that you want your employees to be able to connect with each other online because increasingly we have highly dispersed workforces where
mhm.
you can work from anywhere now. Like you could be working from a Caribbean island, and your coworker is somewhere in New York City,
Right.
right? So we need effective tools to be able to connect together. So a lot of people, what would register with them, I think, very quickly is you say, oh, something like Slack or Microsoft Teams.
Right.
But there are more specific, dedicated platforms for the whole enterprise, not just these chat-based kind of tools that are
Right.
useful for day-to-day interactions with smaller teams.
Right. So the first one I saw is a friend of mine. It looked like a video game, where they actually it looks like one of those first player video games. You're going and you're walking around and you're like you go and you literally like knock on a digital door and it says whether they're there or not, and then they answer it and then they come up and then it pops up and it's like you and that person in that room talking
Sure.
like you and I are talking here in video. And then it's like, okay, we did our collaboration, and then your digital self goes out of that room and then goes off to wherever you go back to your office where you then
Yep.
are there for somebody else to knock on your door. That was when I saw that maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I'm sure it has gotten a lot more sophisticated than that.
It has. And so it's an area that I'm intensely interested in right now, a direction that I see online communities are likely to move in the years ahead. They're not there yet. I think online collaboration, online community is still very much text first, and
Mm,
then video based kind of collaboration space, like you and I are talking right now, virtually across the miles. But I think we're increasingly going to see augmented reality or virtual reality
mm,
spaces where people move into an environment that simulates a physical environment, like a room you and I might walk into. And those experiences are out there. There's a startup that I'm working with as a head of community right now called Kickback Space, which does exactly what you're describing. They have sort of a virtual conference space for educators, and they can kind of walk into that space.
mm,
And rather than seeing like a cartoon avatar, like a la Zuckerberg's Meta, they're instead seeing my video representation. There's my video screen here, but it's maneuverable, almost like a 3D
mm.
virtualized version of me in a first person shooter video game or something
Right,
like that.
right,
So you walk into a room, and that idea of proximity is very, very important, because if my avatar is facing yours in that space, I can tell there's a conversation
right,
that's going
right,
on there.
right.
And some of the rich things you can do in those um, VR types of environments.
Hmm.
I don't need to have a brick on my face to do that.
Right,
For my virtual goggles, it can just be on a browser screen,
right,
and I still have a sense of place being
right,
there. And
right.
if I have headphones on, I can even get a sense of, like, walking by that space. I might hear people in my right ear who are
Ah,
talking over in that direction, and
mm,
that contributes to that sense of tricking our brains into thinking that we're actually in a physical space
gotcha.
and being there.
I went to a virtual summit or conference last year for the first time. So you go into your browser, you log in, and then basically it's like walking into a live conference. and it had, just like you were talking about, it's like basically your face, and on an avatar that was, it's
Mhm.
walking around, and it's like a first video game, just like you're talking about. But they'll have like the exhibits, so you could go up to an exhibitor and then pop
Sure.
in, and if they're not busy, or you might be in line just like you would be if at a busy booth at a conference, right? And then you go in and you talk to them, right? And
Yeah.
I had one guy, he was drawing those caricature artists at
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, like at fairs and stuff like that. He was doing that at this. So he was looking at me on the screen here, and he was basically using a Apple Pad or whatever, and doing the whole thing, and then just gave me a digital caricature for it and said, "Hey, have a nice day." And then I left his booth and went on to the next thing. And there was like this huge stage. You could walk up, and then you had to find a seat. Like, it was just like that. Like, you couldn't just like go in and be in it. You had to find a seat, and then once you sat down, you then had whatever was going on stage, like usually a panel or somebody was speaking, dot dot dot, and so it was there. And then if you wanted to leave, you just went leave, and you would have it, like you would hear it in the background kind of fade away as you went into the next thing, and you'd start hearing
Yeah.
the next conversation. And then they had people at like little cocktail table booths all talking to each other. It's amazing what they're doing with this stuff now.
Well, I mean, I think what we're slowly doing is the technology is enabling us to get rid of some of the social barriers to connection online.
Mm.
It used to be like I would get into, like, back in the ancient times, the before times, you would dial up on a bulletin board, or you go into an IRC chat room or whatever. And these
Oh, these
technologies
are
are
the
still very much with us.
1900s you're talking about.
Yeah, 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 way back, like Victorian times, good day, gov, all that stuff. Um, but yes, back in the ancient days when I was but a young kipper, these were things that we would go into, and but they were all text based,
Mhm.
and so now, um, you know, because we now have, I would say, a ubiquity of
Mhm.
video connection,
Mhm.
Zoom calls, and all sorts of, like we're using StreamYard for this.
Mhm.
Um, that takes away certain barriers, because now I'm getting tone of voice, I'm getting a visual on you, or like some sense of body language is there. Like, all of those things are inputs for our brain so that
Mm.
we can have a really connective conversation with somebody else. Yeah,
Right.
the only things that I'm missing now, if I can at least get the technology pushed into the background of my consciousness,
Uh-huh.
is that, like, I'm not smelling you in the room, like and
Uh-oh, now we're talking 4D
I don't need to,
reality here. Okay, all right, all right, all right, okay. Well, I'm sure that, I mean, they already have the rides now, at that do that. Like, they pump in different smells,
Sure,
and like
sure.
little bursts of air and mist and all that other stuff as you're going through the environment that's on a big, 8
Yes.
4K screen, stuff like that. I was in one in LA where you sat in a chair that your feet were dangling, and they hang glided you through. It was hang gliding footage through the
Yeah.
west coast of California. And you'd go over these ridge crossings, and they would tilt the chair down as you're going
You
over.
feel it.
You could feel it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you're just on a little gyro,
Yeah.
but your whole row was there. So like the whole row would do this, and then you'd go like and
Yes.
foot forward and then back when you're like going up and all that stuff. And they would pump in little perfumes that would smell like trees or the ocean breeze, and
So
all that good
cool.
stuff. You're gonna have it in those VR goggles. That's why they're $3,500 a pop, because they're making room for all of that stuff to happen. They're gonna figure out how to like put smells in your eye sockets and smell through your eyes or something. Like, I know it's gonna happen.
I think you have the title for the podcast today. We will put smells in your eye sockets.
Or it's just gonna be a full mask. It's gonna be like you're just gonna like doosh.
I love it, man. That's
Oh, that's
great.
awesome. Yeah, so all right. Now with these communities on, I think that it's pretty self-evident, like how the difference between an internal community and the power of that, and having your clients base have a community that it can come in and interact with other people and really build that brand. What's the word I'm looking for? Brand loyalty, right? Because
Sure.
you're creating community. Community is the biggest brand loyalty you possibly can have, right? Jeep, I think, has probably the strongest without having to do anything. except just build a vehicle that everybody wanted. And it was it was unique enough to where it's kind of like motorcycle riders, but it's the very specific body, right?
You, yes, you look at you look at any kind of strong visceral brand where people identify really closely to it. I call it the woolly mammoth effect, and I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. But if you look at something like Jeep, you look at Apple, you look at Sephora, Lego,
Lego.
even,
That's a good one.
Harley Davidson,
Yes.
like all of them have powerful associations with that I've like identified myself with
Mhm.
that product or brand in some
I'm
way.
personally a Jeep driving Harley rider who loves Legos. So, I have all of those communities in
You
my
get the
brain.
trifecta. Yeah. Well done, sir. Well done.
I have two Jeeps even. Jeez Louise, I'm so bad. All right. So so I think I mean, that could be a whole nother conversation, but where do you think, or do you think, this new virtual space, as it's still in its infancy now, but with that now we have generative AI and all these other things that can now be plugged into this technology you're talking about, where do you see this virtual space that you're helping people utilize in 3, maybe 5 years? I know that's forever in technology, but let's look into the future and
It
let's
is. Yeah.
foretell.
I don't consider myself a very good prognosticator, but I am very interested in the technologies that we have, I'm a believer in. I think Bruce Sterling talks about the future's already with us; it's just not well distributed. Um,
Okay.
that 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 idea, if we take that, what I'm seeing community platform builders do now, so I'm not talking necessarily about the big social media platforms because I don't consider them community spaces
Right.
necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but as I look at what a lot of the I'll call them cozier community kinds of containers look like today, they are building in AI LLM models. They are building in the ability to generate art or images or graphics, with what they do, and I think that's going to become a lot more common. And I think really those AI platforms are going to become more of a helpful concierge. Like you go into a hotel and there's the concierge behind the desk. And you say, "Hey, where's a great place to go get some sushi?" And they'll say, "Oh, yeah, go down around the corner. There's this awesome place. Talk to Al." I don't know why Al's making sushi, but he's awesome. And so like the same idea, I think within these online communities, rather than what I think is for many people off-putting about sort of discussion forums and online communities today, like finding the right info quickly. Those AIs are going to be a lot better at saying, if you ask them a question in natural language, they'll be able to point you to really what you're looking for in a lot better ways than a lot of the search engines now. I think it's going to happen. That's going to be there. What we were talking about in the first part of the conversation around AR and VR spaces, I'm very excited about that, but I am worried that that's maybe more than 5 years away before that becomes a well distributed kind of experience. There are certainly players in that space that are doing some really important, innovative work right now. I just don't know how fast it's going to get adopted. I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong because I'm excited about starting to think about our online spaces a little bit more architecturally. The way that we plan buildings, I think, when we start thinking about the infrastructure of communities or the architecture of communities, I think we're going to need to kind of put on a mindset a lot more like building designers do in the future.